I should have known something was off the moment I stepped into my parents' house. The scent of homemade lasagna, the dish Mom always used to lure me home, felt like a trap rather than a welcome. Something about the way my siblings, Derek and Vanessa, smirked at me across the polished cherrywood dining table made my stomach tighten. "Just so we're clear," Derek leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance. "We wanted you to know now so there's no confusion later. Everything goes to us." His words hit me like a sucker punch. My fork clattered onto my plate, and suddenly, the rich tomato sauce tasted like ash in my mouth. The hum of distant traffic outside was the only sound breaking the heavy silence as I forced myself to swallow the lump of disbelief forming in my throat. "Excuse me?" My voice wavered, despite my best effort to keep it steady. "What do you mean, everything?" "Exactly what he said, Elena," Mom interjected, her usual tight-lipped smile nowhere in sight. "Your father and I finalized our will, and we wanted you to hear it from us directly. The house, the lake cottage, everything. We're leaving it to Derek and Vanessa." I turned to Dad, searching for a sign of hesitation, some indication that this was a cruel joke. But he wouldn't meet my gaze, staring down at the silverware in front of him like a coward. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, as if he'd rehearsed this moment. "Elena, you have to understand," Dad said, clasping his hands together. "You've done well for yourself. Your career, your financial stability, we're proud of you. But Derek and Vanessa, they still need support." Support. The word made my stomach churn. I had been their support for years, covering mortgage payments, funding Derek's endless college major changes, bailing Vanessa out of her failed business ventures and impulsive spending habits. And now, they were rewarding me with nothing. I blinked, pushing down the hot sting of tears threatening to rise. "So, my reward for paying your mortgage, for spending $30,000 renovating that lake house last summer, for covering tuition and medical bills and every little favor you asked for, is nothing? Because I dared to build a life outside of this family?" Mom sighed dramatically, shaking her head like she was disappointed in me. "This is exactly why we didn't want to tell you. You always bring it back to money, Elena. It's never about family with you." "Never about family." A bitter laugh escaped me. My fingers clenched under the table. "Everything I've done was because of family. Because you asked, Mom. Because you said we stick together." Derek scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, give me a break. No one forced you. You just liked playing the hero." Vanessa let out a quiet, mocking laugh. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would love you as much as they love us." Her words sliced through me like a blade. And the worst part? My parents didn't react, didn't reprimand her. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. I was nothing more than an ATM to them. My vision sharpened, the room narrowing as a slow, cold clarity settled over me. "You know what? You're right, Derek. No one forced me. And from today onward, no one will guilt me into being this family's personal bank account ever again. I'm done." Pushing my chair back abruptly, I stood. Their stunned expressions only fueled the fire burning inside me. I had come here hoping for a warm family dinner, but instead, I had been ambushed, humiliated, discarded. Well, if they wanted to cast me aside, I'd make sure they regretted it. Grabbing my coat from the hallway, I didn't bother saying goodbye. The front door swung shut behind me with a sharp thud, sealing off their voices, their betrayal. The crisp Portland air stung my cheeks as I walked toward my car, but nothing could numb the ache deep in my chest. I slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel, my hands trembling. Tears blurred my vision as the realization settled in. They had never valued me. not for who I was, only for what I could give. During the drive back to my downtown apartment, memories flooded my mind. Every financial sacrifice, every canceled vacation, every sleepless night I had spent juggling spreadsheets and payments to keep them comfortable. I had done it all without complaint, believing it was out of love, that someday they would appreciate it. How naive I had been. Back home, my apartment felt different now, as if everything had shifted. I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet, the expensive one I had saved for a special occasion. Apparently, tonight counted. Settling onto the couch, I pulled up my banking app. The recurring monthly payments flashed mockingly on the screen. $1,800. Parents' mortgage, $600. Utilities. My fingers hovered over the cancel button. Even now, a small part of me hesitated. Years of conditioning told me that family came first, that I was selfish if I walked away. But tonight had stripped that illusion away. With one decisive tap, I canceled the payments. A quiet defiance burned in my chest as the confirmation flashed across the screen. They wanted me to be the outsider? Fine. I'd be an outsider, but I wouldn't be their fool. As the evening faded into night, the hurt still sat heavy in my chest, but beneath it, something new stirred. Liberation. They thought they had cut me off, but the truth was, I was finally free. And for the first time, I realized that was worth more than any inheritance they could have given me. The silence in my apartment was suffocating. Even with the hum of the city outside, my thoughts screamed louder than any traffic or siren ever could. After canceling the payments, I sat on the couch, sipping wine that tasted more bitter than it should have. The weight of my decision hung heavy on my chest, but beneath the sadness, something else flickered. Relief. It was foreign, unsettling, but undeniably there. Then the phone calls began. First Mom, then Dad, then Derek and Vanessa in rapid succession. I let each call go to voicemail, knowing exactly what they would say. It wasn't concern or regret. It was anger. Their financial lifeline had been severed, and for the first time, they would have to fend for themselves. When I finally listened to the messages, my stomach twisted. Mom's voice was sharp, laced with barely contained fury. "Elena, what the hell is wrong with you? You're throwing a tantrum over something that isn't even your business. We raised you better than this. Family supports each other. Call me back so we can fix this." Dad's was quieter, but just as dismissive. "Elena, you're making a mistake. You think you're punishing us, but you'll regret this. You need to reconsider." Then Derek, smug as ever. "Real mature, sis. You can't just cut us off like this and expect no consequences. You owe us after everything. Call me back before this gets worse for you." And finally, Vanessa, dripping with fake concern. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is beyond selfish. You think you're better than us? You're not. Just call Mom and fix this before you completely ruin our family." Ruin our family. As if they hadn't already done that themselves. I deleted every message. I owed them nothing. Not anymore. The next move days passed, and while the calls slowed, the anger inside me grew. I kept replaying that dinner, the smug way Derek and Vanessa had looked at me, the way my parents had chosen them over me, the years of sacrifices I had made, dismissed as if they were nothing. But I wasn't done yet. If they wanted to treat me as an outsider, fine. I would be one. But I wouldn't just walk away. I would make sure they felt what it was like to lose something too. I started digging. Every transaction, every expense I had covered over the years, every bill I had paid for them. It was all there, meticulously documented in my bank statements and emails. Mortgage payments, tuition fees, renovation costs for the lake house. every dime they had taken from me while treating me like an afterthought. Then I looked into the house itself. The will may have named Derek and Vanessa as the inheritors, but legally I had been the one paying for it. And there were records, proof that my money had kept that roof over their heads. A legal loophole? Maybe. Leverage? Absolutely. I wasn't going to take this lying down. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. The confrontation. A week later, I sent a message in the family group chat, a place I had long since muted, filled with meaningless updates and requests for money. We need to talk. Sunday, 7 p.m., the house. It took less than a minute for the responses to roll in. Vanessa. Oh, so now you want to talk? Figures. Derek. Good. We need to straighten you out. Mom. Finally. About time you started acting like part of this family again. Dad. We'll see you then. They thought I was coming to apologize. They had no idea what was coming. Sunday night. The house looked the same, but it felt different. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a battlefield. The air was thick with expectation as I stepped inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. They were all there. Mom sitting stiffly in her usual chair, Dad standing behind her with his arms crossed. Derek and Vanessa lounging on the couch, identical smirks plastered on their faces. You're finally ready to admit you were out of line? Mom started, her tone clipped. I exhaled slowly, setting my bag down and pulling out a thick folder of documents. No, I said evenly. I'm here to make things clear. Derek scoffed. Oh, here we go. The lecture I ignored him, flipping open the folder. For the past 4 years, I have been the one keeping this house afloat. The mortgage? That was me. The lake house renovations? Me. Your tuition, Derek? Paid by me. Vanessa's credit card debt? Also me. Vanessa's smirk faltered. That's ridiculous. I slid a copy of a bank statement across the table. This says otherwise. Dad's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Mom shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I did all of this, I continued, voice firm, because I believed in family. I believed that if I helped, it would mean something, that I meant something. But I was wrong. You used me, took advantage of me, and then when it came time to acknowledge my efforts, you dismissed me. I leaned forward, locking eyes with each of them. But that stops now. Derek rolled his eyes. And what? You expect us to pay you back? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Number, I expect you to understand that you've made an enemy out of the only person who ever truly had your backs. Vanessa scoffed. You're being dramatic. Am I? I pulled out the final document, a legal notice. Because I looked into the ownership of this house. And as it turns out, since I've been the one making the payments, I have legal grounds to contest your inheritance. Mom's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I met her gaze, unflinching. I would. And I will. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then Derek shot up from the couch. You can't just take what's ours. I tilted my head. Can I? Because last I checked, I've already paid for it. Mom clutched her chest like I had struck her. Elena, you can't do this to your family. I let out a cold laugh. That's funny. I was just about to say the same thing to you. Derek's face twisted with rage. You're bluffing. I slid another document across the table. Am I? Mom reached for it, scanning the words with shaking hands. Vanessa read over her shoulder, and I saw the exact moment she realized I wasn't playing games. Dad stayed silent, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I stood, gathering my things. You have a choice. You can fight me, and I will drag this through the courts, expose everything you've done. Or you can acknowledge what you owe me and we settle this quietly." Derek slammed a fist against the table. "This is war." I turned to him, my lips curling into a smirk. "No, Derek, this is justice." And with that, I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. They had underestimated me. Their first mistake. Their last mistake. The weeks that followed my family's betrayal were filled with an eerie silence. The usual flood of messages requesting money, the guilt-laden phone calls, and the last-minute pleas for financial assistance had all stopped. It was as if I had ceased to exist in their world the moment I refused to be their personal bank. For the first time in years, I had peace. But it was an uneasy kind of quiet, like the calm before a storm. I knew my family too well to believe they would simply accept my decision and move on. And I was right. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, sipping on a glass of wine and enjoying the rare stillness, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering. "Elena speaking." A deep sigh echoed through the line before my mother's voice cut through. "Elena, it's your mother. We need to talk." I let a beat of silence stretch between us before replying. "There's nothing left to say, Mom." "You're being unreasonable," she snapped, the exasperation in her voice barely contained. "We're family. Family helps each other." I exhaled sharply. "No, Mom. Family respects each other. Family doesn't take advantage of one another." There was a pause. Then her tone turned colder. "You have no idea the damage you're causing. Do you know what people are saying? Your father and I have had to endure whispers, judgment, all because of you." I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. They were worried about their reputation now, after everything they'd done. "I think you should be more worried about your finances than what the neighbors think," I said evenly. "Or did you think I was going to keep paying your bills even after you cut me out of the will?" "That house has been in our family for decades," she hissed. "Do you really want us to lose everything just because you're throwing a tantrum?" I clenched my jaw, gripping the phone tighter. "You made your choice, Mom. You chose Derek and Vanessa. You made it clear I was just a wallet to you. So no, I don't feel guilty." She scoffed. "We did what we had to do for your siblings. They needed the help." "And I didn't?" My voice rose, the years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "I didn't need support, encouragement, a single damn thank you for everything I did? You expect me to keep giving while you tell me I don't matter?" "Elena, no." My voice was firm. "You're the ones who burned this bridge. Now you can deal with the consequences." I hung up before she could say another word. That conversation was only the beginning. Days later, Vanessa texted me. "Mom and Dad are going to lose the house. Do you really want that on your conscience?" Then Derek. "You're really doing this? After everything we've been through as a family?" I ignored them both. They had made their choice, and now they were finally realizing the cost. But my family wasn't done yet. One evening, as I arrived home from work, I noticed something strange. My front door was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I pushed it open cautiously. The sight that greeted me made my blood boil. Vanessa was inside, lounging on my couch, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. A half-eaten sandwich sat on my coffee table. My refrigerator door was open, my groceries rummaged through. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice sharp. She looked up lazily, not even bothering to act surprised. "Mom and Dad gave me a key. I needed a place to crash." I felt a cold fury settle deep in my chest. "Get out!" "Oh, come on," she groaned, rolling her eyes. "I'll only be here for a few nights. My apartment's lease ran out and I don't have anywhere else to go." "Not my problem," I snapped. You don't live here, and you damn sure aren't welcome." She smirked. "Come on, Elena. Be a good big sister. You can't just kick me out." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I can call the cops instead." Her smirk faltered. "You wouldn't." "Try me." Vanessa stood up, muttering curses under her breath as she grabbed her purse. She brushed past me, pausing at the doorway. "Mom and Dad won't forget this." I let out a humorless laugh. "Neither will I." The next day, I had the locks changed. But that wasn't enough. I knew my family would continue to push, to test my boundaries, and I was done playing defense. It was time to take the fight to them. I gathered every financial document I had, every bank transfer, every Venmo receipt, every single transaction where I had paid for my parents' mortgage, Vanessa's rent, Derek's tuition. I compiled them into an organized, undeniable file of evidence. And then, I took the final step. I contacted a lawyer. I returned to my apartment that night, the weight of everything pressing heavily on my shoulders. The finality of it all, the severed ties, the truth laid bare, the realization that my family had never truly valued me, settled deep into my bones. But beneath the exhaustion, beneath the lingering ache of betrayal, something else stirred. Freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't bound by obligations I never agreed to. No more monthly payments disappearing into a black hole of entitlement. No more frantic calls about overdue bills. No more sacrificing my own dreams to prop up those who never once appreciated it. The silence that filled my apartment wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, letting the cool night air wash over me. The city lights stretched out before me, each one representing a life separate from my own. I had spent too many years living for others, and now, for the first time, I was going to live for myself. The next morning, I took a step I should have taken years ago. I opened a new savings account, one completely separate from any connection to my family. Every dollar I once funneled into their bottomless pit of needs would now go toward my future. A home of my own, investments, travel, things that would bring me joy, not just survival. Days passed, then weeks. My parents tried calling at first, their voices dripping with condescension and manipulation. They accused me of abandoning them, of turning my back on family. But I saw through it now. Family was supposed to be a support system, not a life sentence. I let their calls go to voicemail, deleting each message without a second thought. Then, one evening, Aunt Daisy showed up at my door. "Elena," she said softly, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite place. Pride? Concern? "I wanted to check on you." I stepped aside, letting her in, grateful for the first familiar face that didn't bring pain with it. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the tea I had made for her. "Your mother is telling everyone you're trying to make them homeless," she said after a long pause. I let out a dry laugh. "Of course she is." Daisy sighed. "I know the truth, Elena. I've always known. I saw the way they leaned on you, the way they expected you to be their safety net while never giving you the love you deserved in return." A lump formed in my throat. "Then why didn't you say anything?" Her face softened with regret. "Because I thought you'd leave when you were ready, and I see now that you finally have." I nodded, swallowing the emotions that threatened to rise. "I'm done, Daisy. I can't keep pretending that being related by blood means I owe them everything." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Good. You deserve better." The next day, the fallout began. My mother's story about my betrayal started unraveling as the truth spread. People who once believed her sob story began to question the years of unchecked financial dependence. My father's pride, so fragile yet so domineering, took a hit when others whispered about how he'd let his daughter carry the weight of his responsibilities. And Derek? He spiraled. Without my financial support, he was finally forced to face the reality of his reckless choices. But the biggest blow came weeks later. I was at work when the call came. I hesitated for only a moment before answering. Elena. My mother's voice was stiff, formal. I waited. The house. It's being foreclosed. I exhaled slowly, feeling not guilt, but a strange kind of closure. I'm sorry to hear that. There was silence on the other end before she finally whispered, "We thought you'd help." I closed my eyes, remembering every moment they had dismissed my sacrifices as nothing. Every dollar I had given. Every time I had put them first while they belittled me. And I knew, without hesitation, what my answer was. I already have. I ended the call, set my phone down, and turned back to my work. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. The days following the confrontation with my family felt strangely silent, like the eerie calm after a devastating storm. I had expected more calls, more attempts to reel me back in, but there was nothing. It was as if they had finally accepted that I was gone, or at least, that I was no longer of use to them. But deep down, I knew better. My family had never let anything go that easily. I kept my distance, throwing myself into my work at Bennett Construction. The firm was expanding rapidly, and with my promotion, I had more responsibilities than ever. I found solace in the controlled chaos of deadlines, blueprints, and client negotiations. Each passing day reinforced the realization that I was better off without them. Then, one evening, as I was reviewing project reports in my apartment, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Aunt Daisy. "Elena, I think you should see this." Attached was a link to a social media post from my mother. Curious but wary, I clicked on it. The post was long and dramatic, painting my parents as the victims of an ungrateful daughter who had abandoned them in their time of need. It detailed how they were now struggling financially because I had selfishly cut them off. There were pictures of the house in slight disrepair, as if they had gone out of their way to make it look pitiful, and even a throwback photo of us all smiling together at a family barbecue. The caption was the worst part. Family is supposed to stick together, but some people let money change them. We raised Elena, gave her everything, and in return, she turned her back on us. Now, we are left picking up the pieces while she enjoys the high life. It breaks my heart to know that greed has poisoned our family. My breath caught in my throat. The audacity. I scrolled through the comments, my stomach twisting at how many people had fallen for the sob story. Family friends, distant relatives, even former neighbors. Everyone was chiming in with sympathy for my parents, condemning me without even knowing the truth. How could she do that to you, after everything you've done for her? Ungrateful children are the worst. I hope she realizes her mistake before it's too late. You don't deserve this. Stay strong. My blood boiled. The worst part? Not a single mention of Derek or Vanessa. My parents had rewritten history so that I was the villain, while my siblings, the actual financial burdens, remained conveniently absent from the narrative. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to type out a furious response exposing every lie, every sacrifice, every injustice they had conveniently erased. But I forced myself to take a deep breath. Responding emotionally would only give them more ammunition. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Aunt Daisy. She answered on the second ring. "I figured you'd see it soon." "How long has this been up?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Since this morning. The comments are piling up fast." I exhaled sharply. They're making me out to be a monster." "I know, sweetheart," Daisy said gently. "But the people who matter? They'll see through it." "Will they?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Because right now, it feels like I'm being erased from my own story." There was a pause. Then, with quiet determination, Daisy said, "Then maybe it's time to tell your side." The idea settled over me like a weighty decision. For so long I had played the role of the dutiful daughter, the silent provider. But if my family was going to publicly vilify me, then maybe it was time the truth came out. I spent the rest of the night crafting a response, not one filled with rage or pettiness, but with cold, undeniable facts. I outlined the years of financial support I had provided, the mortgage payments, the tuition bills, the renovations. I attached receipts, bank transfers, even emails where my parents had directly asked for money. I made it clear that I had never once abandoned my family, but rather I had finally stepped away after being taken advantage of for years. And then, at the very end, I wrote, "I have never asked for gratitude. I have never demanded recognition. But I will not stand by while my family rewrites history to suit their needs. The truth is here. Believe what you will." I hit post and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then, I waited. The reaction was immediate. Support flooded in from unexpected places. Former coworkers, childhood friends, even some distant relatives who had always suspected something was off. The tide was shifting, and my parents' carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack. But the biggest surprise came the next morning when my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. "What the hell have you done?" The weeks following Derek's vandalism were eerily quiet. My parents, Derek and Vanessa, had all but disappeared from my life, their absence a stark contrast to the chaos they had once brought. But their silence wasn't an olive branch. It was the eye of the storm before the final confrontation. Then came the news I had been expecting. Aunt Daisy called me one evening, her voice laced with urgency. "Elena, your parents are struggling. The bank has started foreclosure proceedings on their house." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Daisy, they made their choices." "I know," she said gently, "but they're still family." The next morning, I drove past my childhood home. The once pristine lawn was overgrown, the paint on the shutters beginning to peel. A bright yellow foreclosure notice was pinned to the front door. I parked across the street, watching the house where I had spent so many years, where my sacrifices had kept it afloat. Now it stood as a monument to misplaced loyalty. I expected to feel pity. I expected guilt to claw at my chest. But all I felt was finality. That evening, a voicemail from my mother came through. Her voice was ragged, desperate. "Elena, please. We're losing everything. We need your help." I didn't call back. Instead, I pulled up my banking app and transferred the final payment toward my new condo, my name the only one on the deed. A few days later, Vanessa sent a text. "Congratulations. You got what you wanted. Hope you're proud." I stared at it for a long moment before replying, "I got what I deserved." Christmas Eve arrived, and instead of being wrapped in the suffocating tension of family gatherings, I surrounded myself with friends, real friends who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. Aunt Daisy was there, raising a glass in silent solidarity. As the night wound down, I stepped onto my balcony, the city glittering below. My phone buzzed with another message from my mother. I didn't open it. Instead, I took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. For the first time, I felt free. They had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, I had won. Not by taking revenge, but by choosing myself. And that was the greatest victory of all.